Altar Solutions, and I am so excited to be here today on Focus Forward and have a phenomenal guest for us. Somebody that I just got to know recently and am really so impressed with. Not only is she fabulous, but the method for meditation that she's created is absolutely awesome. So today I want you to help me welcome Dr. Deb Sandella, the creator of the RIM method of meditation. Dr. Deb, please.
Yes. Hi, Lori.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Oh, thank you. I was looking forward to being with you.
Yeah, it's just, this is going to be phenomenal. So first of all, RIM, you know, I was out in Sedona with a group of people that we know, and everybody, while everyone knows RIM, and most people have had experience with RIM and also have had sessions with you, there was a big discussion. What does RIM stand for?
Yes, well, originally RIM stood for Releasing the Inner Magician, which is the title of my first book and meditation CD. And that title, you know, it came to me in a very magical way. And so I felt like it was a sense of direction, because at the time I actually was a practicing psychotherapist, and the idea of an inner magician really seemed pretty far out. But having that title, it guided me into a journey of exploring who we are beyond our feelings, beyond our psychology, beyond our humanness. Who are we, and what is that journey? So it's actually been a very inspiring title for me.
Well, that's really interesting, because when we were spending time together, I've done so many different things. I've done, you know, Reiki, and I've done past life regression, and I've done meditation. I've done all these things. But I found that RIM method just took you so deep, so quickly, and was able to really give me a much more profound experience and more of a kind of like a 360 understanding of past lives. And I don't know if it's like that for everyone, but past lives, and also understanding of kind of the journey. So tell us a little bit about it, because I'm still a little bit confused. It was so wonderful.
Right.
I haven't figured it out yet.
Well, you were inside it. So when we're inside it, it's like being in the fishbowl. You can't really see it. So that's understandable. So if you think about brain waves like this, you can see my finger, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So in the brain waves, let's say at the top of the brain wave is a thought, or the left brain operating. Then we dip down into the right brain, and then there's another thought. You have the left brain, so you're going left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain. And so RIM actually involves the whole brain. It involves both the left brain and the right brain, so that we dip from thought down into that imaginary place of intuition, of our own sense of spirit, who we are, and then we bring that back up into thought. And there are very few techniques actually that include both, that really connect both. And so what happens is we access inner resources that are very deep, and then bring them back into consciousness. So we move into that which is out of consciousness but is available, that we just aren't aware of, and we bring it back into consciousness to be able to be used in a useful, conscious way. So it's quite amazing. The other part of RIM that really, I would say, takes it deeper than many techniques is there's that part that we call body sensing as well as image sensing. So we're using imagination, and our imaginations are, oh my God, they are such a fantastic inner resource. We just haven't learned how to use them. We've been relying on our left brain instead of imagination to access that visionary wisdom within us, that sense of knowing that is greater than the intellectual mind, greater than logic. Does that help you understand at all, or do you have any questions about what I'm saying?
Well, that really helps me to understand what it is, the relationship, and also I can relate that to the feeling that I experienced.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm getting what you're saying. I find it really, really fascinating. But first of all, I want to ask you, how did you create this?
Well, you know, It's really interesting. In 1995, I got a call from my brother that my dad had had a cardiac arrest. And he was in the hospital. His blood pressure wasn't holding. And the nurses had called and asked if we would agree to a no resuscitate. And I had this immediate intuitive response of absolutely not. That's not where I'm going. And which was very out of character for me, but it was so strong, it was undeniable. And as I hung up the phone to go to bed, knowing I would go there the next morning, I started having this spontaneous vision of seeing my dad walk off into a great light. He has his back to me. And there I was yelling and screaming at him, no, no, I'm not ready for you to go. I'm so angry that you're leaving. And then all of a sudden he paused and he stopped and he turned around and he looked at me and it gives me goosebumps to remember his face because he had this radiant glow that I had never seen on him before. And he said, "Oh, I didn't know you felt that way." Okay. And that was it. And then the vision faded. And so I went back to bed and somehow I felt I couldn't really go to sleep. I had to stay connected with that image of him all night long. The next morning I went to the hospital in Kansas. I flew from Colorado to Kansas, walked into ICU, and they said, sometime in the middle of the night his blood pressure started to hold. And he survived. He survived for another 5 years that my mom and my dad said were the very best years of his life. And so when that happened, at that time, I was actually an assistant professor at the University of Colorado. I was doing research. I was a traditional psychotherapist, but none of that, meant very much when I was facing his death. And at that moment, I knew there was a power here that we're not using. And I decided that that was the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to learn how to harness this power intentionally. So that was actually the beginning. That was the beginning.
That is an unbelievable story. That's such a fascinating story. So that was the beginning of, well, first of all, that's the beginning, really, I think, of understanding this relationship. But then how did RIM come out of that?
So, so I ended up actually closing my psychotherapy practice. And my husband and family, we ended up having a sabbatical in Australia for almost a year. And that wasn't in pursuit of this. It was actually because my husband was turning 50 and he wanted to be in charge of his midlife crisis. Yet, what happened is while I was over there, I really delved into the Aboriginal dream time. When we came back, I studied more and more about the powers of the subconscious and the unconscious mind. I studied somatic therapy. I studied interactive guided imagery, Ericksonian hypnosis. Those were techniques I developed skills in. And I began to just experiment and play with using only that medium, because in psychotherapy it's a talk therapy. You talk about things. And so I began to experiment with letting go of all the talking about and to move into the inner experience as the whole thing, the big thing. And that instead of being the expert, I became a guide, a facilitator for the client to appreciate and go with their own journey into their deeper selves. And neither I nor they knew what we would find. I just knew it would be good. And as over the 15 years I've been doing this, the skills have been developing and refining, and new things happen. And I have to say that as I was doing this, many of the skills started to come out of what was elicited from me as a guide when I sat with a client. So a client would come up with a situation I had never been in before, and my intuition guided me as to assist them to go deeper into it, to allow the answers to come in some new intuitive way. And so that's really been the process. What's interesting, even though the RIM has evolved in a very intuitive way, all of the new neuroscience research absolutely grounds why it works. And so it's an interesting, it wasn't created out of the science. It was created intuitively prior to the science. And now the science really, you know, justifies why it's effective.
Wow, that's really fascinating. That is so fascinating. So let's just switch for a second and
Yeah.
talk about meditation, because in the morning, when I want to do my meditation every morning, I'm going to be honest, I don't. But this morning I had a great morning. I wasn't hurried. I said to myself, I'm going to do my meditation this morning. And there I hear your voice, because I love that Awakening Power CD set. I love that. I mean, I have other meditations and things like that, but that one just is, it's just my favorite. And I have certain meditations in there that I like so much. So, in looking at the meditation, I have gotten so many ideas for my business and for the way that I want to move and the direction I want to move. Sometimes I'm a little bit confused. Should I do this? Should I do this? Am I going to do this? And after I meditate, it's almost like a beam that comes right from the sky, from the source, where I get the answers to exactly what it is that I should do. So, what is the relationship between maybe meditating and getting guidance as an entrepreneur?
Yes, and you're exactly right that in similar to what I was describing with REM, of dipping down into those inner resources that are greater than our human self, that's the same thing that meditation does. So REM is happens in a meditative state. So one of the things, as soon as we close our eyes, we change our from our left brain to our right brain, because the visual channel is so connected to thinking and analysis, because we're taking in data everywhere. We're just taking in thousands and thousands, millions of bits of data into the brain when we have our eyes open. So the minute we close our eyes, our focus very easily begins to move inward, because there's nothing to look at. And so in meditation, there is a process of just shifting the attention. Just by merely shifting the attention, it's really actually quite simple, because we're shifting our attention from the external world to our internal world. Now, in our culture, we tend to be very externally focused on the world, and which leads us to be a pretty left brain dominant culture. And yet, what happens when we start to allow the right brain to be known and allowed through meditation, we realize that we really have access to much more wisdom, to the answers for us, to a sense of peace and calm and inner safety that the left brain actually can't do. The left brain can't provide that. So, how the left brain would approach safety is to give you all the statistics, to try and say, well, statistically, this is unlikely to happen, which allows a certain amount of safety. Most of our life is not predictable by statistics, so that there's always an element of risk. So, in order to have an inner sense of safety, so that we can really expand fully into who we are and absolutely express what our talents are in the world, then we want to allow the right brain to be the leader of our life. So the right brain is the visionary, the left brain's the administrator. So we want the visionary to be the one that determines the goals and creates the products, the ideas of the products, because then you have this access to that which has never been known before, that has never been seen, that you don't have any real information about. So you want to be able to have access to all of that. It's so rich, so that when we move into meditation, the brain actually has the opportunity to start putting together bits of information that have not been connected before in some new creative way. So when we do that, not only do we gain a sense of excitement and inspiration, we also gain this sense of inner safety that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, that this is our path, that we're walking down the path we're supposed to be walking. And it's very exciting. So it's energizing and refreshing. So it no longer seems like work. It seems like a sense of expressing who you are and why you're supposed to be here, what you're supposed to be doing. So it really changes the entrepreneurial journey in a very significant way. And I don't know how you look at it, Lori, but I think of entrepreneurial personality as someone who really needs that, because you're looking at people usually who are creative. They're very inspired on their own. They get lots of ideas. They're enthusiastic. They're drawn in a lot of directions. And if anything, I would say entrepreneurs tend to be overextended because they get so excited about so many ideas, so that sometimes learning how to focus in a very wise way, in a visionary way, what is the place to put the energy that will get the greatest results given who you are, what your talents are, what your resources are, that kind of information that comes during meditation is very important for an entrepreneur.
Well, I have to say that you have given me so much great advice. So what I want to do is I want to roll back to something that you said, because I think that that is really the key to the kingdom for the entrepreneur. What you said is the left brain is the administrator and the right brain is the creator, if I got that right.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So what I find most entrepreneurs do is they start out with getting a right brain idea, getting that creative idea, and the further they move with that idea, the more the left brain has to take over. Because the more they step into the administrator role. And they're the ones, while they've come up with these brilliant ideas and they've created these phenomenal businesses, they're shifted along the way into being more left brain.
Well, I would say that it's still important to have the balance. So that is absolutely right, that the creator is the leadership. I think it was Jonas Salk who created the polio vaccine that says the intuitive mind tells the logical mind where to look, and then the logical mind does the work. And so that's accurate. And even in the journey, the administrative journey, you want to be able to be balanced and have whole brain. You want to have whole brain function, because that will keep you refreshed. It'll keep you making wiser decisions, better decisions. There's actually research out of Australia that right brain decision making is better than left brain decision making. However, when you're, creating when you're working on something that's very concrete, you've got to have the administrator there. You've got to, put in all the pieces to make it work. You've got to make it operational. So the administrator is very, very important. And anytime you're making a decision, you want to also bring in that right brain again.
So what I find working with entrepreneurs on a daily basis is the entrepreneurs tend to focus more on the left brain, the getting things done, getting it done.
Right.
And they cut themselves off from the right brain because they don't have time for that. So they become more and more administrator. Their business tends to solidify, absolutely, because the administrator's making it happen and doing things. In reality, the business doesn't really evolve in the pure way, and they find the more that they focus on the administration, the less differentiator they have.
Exactly, because now the spark is gone.
The spark is gone.
And
now they're usually bored.
Work. It's become work, and it can become a burden, can have some drudgery feel to it, instead of the spark and the excitement and the enthusiasm. That is where the original idea came from.
So what I think is if we helped entrepreneurs to say, okay, I know you're working 80 hours a week, why don't we, and you're driving your business 80 hours a week, and you don't want to take 1 hour a week out to do the meditation because you're so busy doing these other things, when in reality, if you did spend a little time in meditation, it would make the rest of those 79 hours much easier. Plus, your business would evolve in such a way that it would really, truly only be yours. And you would be using and receiving messages that only you were getting. So
Right, exactly, exactly. And rejuvenating your spirit so that you are a brilliant, friendly, attractive, magnetic ambassador for your business. Because that's really important. It's like, so when we maximize that magnetic ability within us as an entrepreneur, things are all going to work better. So yes, I think that's exactly right. And the word effectiveness is very important, because when people, there's actually a lot of research on this, that when we meditate daily, even for 15 minutes, that the brain organizes itself, the inner sense becomes organized, renewed, and so we make better decisions about our time. We become more effective in using our time and applying our time. So actually, we end up having more free time at the same time as being more successful. Which the left brain goes, oh, that's not possible. But the right brain knows how to do that.
exactly, and there's less stress, and
Yes.
you feel like you're not as confused because you're really getting the messages that allow you to really focus in on those things that you could be doing, as opposed to focusing that administrator making you work all those hours. You could use that divine guidance, if you will. So we're almost out of time. I can't believe it. This is the quickest yet. But before we do that, first of all, what are 3 tips that you would recommend an entrepreneur do to help them to tap that right brain? Maybe 3 tips that you could give.
Well, I would say the very first thing is to know that right inside in our own resources, that we do have the ability to know whatever it is that we need to know to get a good outcome. It is always there. And so that's number one thing. The second thing is that it's easy enough. It's as easy as closing your eyes and pausing and just sitting with yourself. That it's really not a hard thing, and it doesn't have to even be more than 15 minutes in the beginning. I know when I started 15 years ago, I started with 15 minutes because it was like, oh, I couldn't do that. But the results are phenomenal. And the third thing is that what happens with the results from meditation is that they're at this deep subconscious body level. So they happen spontaneously. We don't have to apply willpower. And that's why it's so much easier. So it's really as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Well, absolutely. And my favorite meditation on the awakening power is actually, it's like 13 minutes and 6 seconds. Because
Yes.
I can always find 13 minutes and 6 seconds. So I can always do that. And when I finish that, I feel so grounded, like no matter what goes on, I'm going to be able to handle it. It takes that, because I tend to be high energy, it takes that energy and it purifies the energy. Doesn't take the energy away, it purifies it, so I can really focus in on what I'm doing. So I know that you offer classes in RIM and you teach people how to do that.
I do.
Yeah, so tell me just in like a minute, tell me exactly like what those classes look like.
So there is the basic RIM facilitator program is a process of learning how to be that guide. so that rather than a expert, you become a facilitator to help others move into an appreciation of what is really there inside of them. There are two seminars, 4-day seminars. There are 2 monthly calls and 2 private RIM sessions because I totally believe in doing our own work so that we're a real channel for what needs to happen, so that our own issues don't contaminate or get in the way of the field, so that whatever the client is learning, we're not in their way. We're just a neutral facilitator, and that's really important. So the program actually has benefits for both personal development and self-evolution, as well as learning skills of how to facilitate breakthroughs in 20 minutes with somebody you're working with. So I've had people use it in business. I've had them use it with their employees. We've had them use it with kids in school. We've had them use it with patients in a hospital or a medical setting, with different kind of physical conditions, with emotional issues, crises, PTSD. I mean, it's really the whole range because the technique, it's not the technique. The technique accesses that in us that already knows the answer. So it can work for really almost anything, because what's inside of us is so much wiser and so much has so much more breadth than we've ever known.
Well, I can attest to that. It was absolutely phenomenal. So I'm so sorry we have to say goodbye to you now. Hopefully you'll be able to come back another time, give us some more information on this, because this was fascinating. So thank you so much, Dr. Deb. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lori. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great. So Lori Flaquer, thank you so much for tuning in today.